Je reconnais la membre de Tantramar.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm rising to respond to the throne speech, and like many of my colleagues here, I do want to start by saying thank you to the people of Tantramar who've elected me to sit in this seat and be their voice here in the legislature. It's really an honor, and I'm very glad to be back here to represent you. I want to say thank you to my campaign team who knocked on doors with me and made calls, and we had a great time, and doing this all through heat waves and various different types of weather. I want to thank my family, my husband Steve, my kids Quinn and Henry, as well as my mom, my in-laws, who all have been supportive since I first ran for office a decade ago. And I want to thank my community for trusting me to continue to work for and with them. J'ai fier de représenter les gens de Tantramar, et je veux aussi juste parler un peu de Memramcook. C'est bizarre maintenant, j'étais la députée pour Memramcook pour 6 ans, alors c'est un peu bizarre chaque fois que j'entends Memramcook, je me lève presque, mais c'était un honneur de représenter cette communauté. Et oui, je veux juste dire que n'importe quel candidat les gens ont voté pour, je vais représenter tout le monde, et même incluant les personnes qui ne pouvaient pas voter. And so I'm going to talk about this throne speech, and I want to start by saying there are things that I support in this throne speech. Many of them are things that, as Greens, we have been advocating for years. And some are exactly what I would like. Some are a different version, maybe a watered-down version in some cases, but I'm still glad that they're included here. We face so many crises. The reality we face in New Brunswick is a major challenge. We face a health crisis, inequality crisis, climate crisis. We're on track for 2024 to be the hottest year on record, Mr. Speaker. And so many of our systems are broken. Having been MLA now for 6 years, I've helped many people try to navigate different systems, and I see how there's a process in place, but it doesn't always serve the people of New Brunswick who need support. And when it comes to some of these policies that are outlined here, when it comes to some of the things I'm glad are in here, the devil's going to be in the details, Mr. Speaker. When it comes to the legislation, the regulations, and the implementation. And so I'll be paying attention as different things come forward. And already we've seen a bill for a rent cap come forward. I'm glad to see that. We've been pushing for a rent cap for years now, and I don't think it goes far enough. I think we need vacancy control where the rent cap is tied to the unit, as well as some other protections for tenants. And so I hope there's a willingness on the part of this new government to listen to different ideas in here, to be open to amendments to legislation. I am actually quite happy that we're going to be having witnesses come to Economic Policy Committee next week for this bill. We can do a better job of creating legislation here, Mr. Speaker, and so I'm hopeful that this is a sign of us doing that, of doing things differently in here. And so I'm not sure if there are any comedy fans out there, but I've been a fan of many comedians, from Conan O'Brien and Tina Fey to Amy Poehler, a lot of folks on SNL, and a lot of them have worked in and been part of improv troupes. And I do have a point, Mr. Speaker. And I remember I used to watch Whose Line Is It Anyways decades ago. And with improv, one thing I've learned is the fundamental approach is yes and. If someone throws an idea out there, you don't just shut it down, you go yes and then you add to it, you build on it, so that things don't just stall and fall apart, which would be very awkward in an improv scenario and is detrimental in a legislative scenario. And so I'm going to try to take the approach of yes and, of taking an idea that's put forward in this throne speech, for example, instead of saying no and shutting it down and shutting down momentum, using that idea as a starting point and building on it. And so I must start by talking about health. This is something that I think touches every New Brunswicker. It's particularly important to me, as it really drove me to run in the 2018 election, Mr. Speaker. And I know I've shared this before, but my dad had pancreatic cancer, and he moved in with me. I took care of him until he passed away, and I saw so many parts of our healthcare system, from them being understaffed in the hospital and unable to change the sheets on his bed, and so I did it, to the breakdown in palliative care, to not being able to go into the ER, to being left in the hallway. I saw so many problems, and it compelled me to put my name forward in 2018, because I know we can do better, and patients deserve respect and care. And I know the people in the system are trying their best to provide care, but that system has been crumbling for a long time, and they're struggling to be able to provide the care that they want to. I did notice in the platform, and as well in the throne speech, a commitment to a healthcare clinic in Sackville. And so I'm a little baffled about exactly what that means, because I'm really excited that we finally have a collaborative care clinic really coming together and different staff being hired already. And so I'm hoping what the commitment is that this government's going to give the $1 million approximately that's needed for the next step in developing the infrastructure, so that there's enough space for that clinic to operate. So I'm hoping that that's what's coming when they say that a clinic's coming, because we've got staff being hired, and I think I finally feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel for actually seeing care provided for some people in my community. We've been pushing for retention bonuses for a long time, and so I am glad to see this in the throne speech. Je dirais, c'est important d'appuyer les infirmières, absolument, et j'étais contente de voir, c'est pas seulement les infirmières dans les hôpitaux, mais aussi dans les foyers de soins. Mais il ne faut pas oublier les autres types de professionnels dans la santé, parce qu'il faut les retenir aussi. Ça prend des dizaines de différents types de professionnels dans la santé pour avoir les soins de santé dans nos hôpitaux et hors de nos hôpitaux. Alors, il ne faut pas oublier les personnes qui ne sont pas infirmières. Les sages-femmes, je suis vraiment contente que c'est là, et comme j'ai dit, ça dépend sur les détails, mais oui, il faut pas seulement avoir des autres endroits où nous pouvons avoir accès aux sages-femmes, mais aussi changer la loi pour que nous pouvons avoir accès à l'éducation. So we need the act to be changed so that there can be education and apprenticeship for midwives in New Brunswick, because that is certainly a barrier. And so I'm looking forward to seeing the details on this. When it comes to mental health, this is among the crises that we are facing in our province. And I'm going to talk about addictions, but they should not be conflated as one in the same. I want to say that I hope this government will implement the recommendations from multiple coroner's reports at this point, from unfortunately young people who have died by suicide. And I know from the evidence in the inquests, some of them accessed the hospital, the ER, many times in the year before they died, for example. And it's heartbreaking and it's wrong, and the system has failed them and their families. And so there are recommendations that have been put forward in multiple coroner's reports, and those need to be implemented. The system is currently failing not just our youth, but people across the province. And so we need to have a way, we need to have something that's not the ER for emergencies, mental health crises. So we need to have somewhere people can go, and we need to be implementing the other recommendations, and some of them have to do with continuity of care. I did feel that there were some things missing, that I would have liked more detail, more substance in the throne speech. I understand that the document by its nature is kind of vague, but I'm very passionate about public health, and I would love to see more about public health here. There's a lot of work to be done. Public health was, I was about to say destroyed, I don't know, dismantled a bit, like taken apart, and different parts of it were put in different departments. And so the expertise, some of it was lost, some of it was sort of divided up, and we need proper funding, and I know it is mentioned in here, we need independence of the Chief Medical Officer of Health to be able to be the population's doctor, to be able to speak to us directly, not through spokespeople in the government, to speak to us directly, and to be working on some of the key issues. Like, I've said it many times today, just today, but I'll say it again. You can't get vaccines in my riding. Most people can't. I couldn't get vaccinated in my town. That's so wrong. I couldn't get flu and COVID vaccines. My daughter can't either. We can do so much better, and that feels like a basic place to start, but there's a lot of work on public health issues, whether it be from alcohol consumption and fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, to radon, to the mystery disease, as some people call it, but it's the atypical neurodegenerative disease that has presented in many people, and we need to be moving a lot faster. Years have been lost at this point, Mr. Speaker. It's heartbreaking to think about what that means for people, including people in my region, in my riding, who are ill right now. And so not only do I want to see the Public Health Agency of Canada be involved, and for environmental testing to start, and for work to be done, but I'd like transparency, and I'd like for the documents that show what happened to be made public, so we know why did this all stop. The research into this in like May 2021. What happened? That is one of the mysteries around this, Mr. Speaker. What happened there? Prevention, which connects very much to public health. Prevention is often forgotten, especially because we are facing crises around lack of family doctors, ERs overflowing or not even being open 24/7, like the one in Sackville needs to be reopened to be able to serve my community. Mais il faut miser sur la prévention, non seulement pour avoir des meilleurs résultats pour les patients, pour les Néo-Brunswickois et Néo-Brunswickoises, mais aussi ça va coûter moins cher dans le long terme, Monsieur le Président. Ça va être mieux pour notre système de soins de santé, avoir moins de pression sur notre système si nous investissons dans la prévention. Je veux aussi mentionner la privatisation. J'ai vraiment peur de ce qui se passe depuis longtemps, des gouvernements successifs. On voit des parties de notre système de soins de santé données, à mes avis, données au privé, souvent même pas avec un processus pour faire des demandes, des RFP and tender. C'est vraiment juste, mes avis proposent quelque chose et le gouvernement dit « d'accord ». Et je suis contre ça. Je pense que nous devrons gérer notre système de soins de santé et ça inclut extramural et les ambulances et les cliniques de soins de santé. Je ne suis pas contre avoir des cliniques comme HealthLink, comme Lien Santé, mais je suis contre la privatisation de la gestion de ça, Madame la Présidente. Alors, c'est vraiment dangereux ce qui se passe. Et ça continue. Je pense qu'il faut vraiment changer de voie avec ça et avoir ces choses dans la publique, Madame la Présidente. Je vais maintenant parler de l'abordabilité. C'est quelque chose qui touche beaucoup des Néo-Brunswickois et Néo-Brunswickoises. The number of children living in poverty in New Brunswick rose from 26,360, which is 18.7% in 2021, to 31,430, 21.9% in 2022. So this is heartbreaking, Madam Speaker, to know tens of thousands of children in our province are living in poverty. And it's not evenly distributed across the province. I talk a lot about inequality, and one of the inequities we have in our province is between rural and urban and between different parts of the province. We know that it's actually a third of children, 29%, who are living in poverty in Campbellton, St. John, and Bathurst. And nearly 1 in 4 children under the age of 6 are living in poverty. And children with one-parent families, 47.9%, almost half, are living in poverty. And I'm taking the time to read out these stats from New Brunswick's 2024 Child and Family Poverty Report Card from the Human Development Council, because this is so important. It's not only wrong that so many people are living in poverty, it's not only wrong that these children are living in poverty right now, but there are such long-term consequences for them, whether it be if there's malnutrition or it affects their education. It's definitely going to affect their health long-term. We can do better. And it's a choice, Madam Speaker, to allow people in our province to live in poverty. It is a choice, and so we can make different choices around the supports we offer in our communities. And as I was saying earlier, the systems are not supporting the people that need them. All too often, I'll reach out to social development, and the people there and the social workers are working within a difficult system. They don't have a lot of tools at their disposal. They have too many people on their caseload. And like we just can't get the help that people need. It is beyond frustrating and heartbreaking. And I see this time and again, people with disabilities who apply to get the extended benefit and are told they don't have a disability by some group of people, medical review board. That is wrong. And people with disabilities, people on social assistance, many people in our province are struggling to get by. And I think a lot of people are struggling to get by, and the most vulnerable among us are becoming unhoused, are not eating so their kids can eat, are trying to decide, do I pay for my prescriptions, or do I buy food or pay my heat bill? Do I sell my house because I can't really afford it, but I won't be able to find rent that's cheaper than what I'm paying now? There's no winning for so many people, Madam Speaker. And so, like I said, I'm glad the rent cap is coming in. We do need to look at giving authority to the Residential Tenancies Tribunal or the Landlord and Tenants Relations Office to be able to intervene when discrimination is happening, because it is happening all too often. We do need a property tax overhaul, because people in my riding and across the province have lost faith, frankly, in that system. It has become very frustrating, and in some cases, it's forcing people to try to decide, can I afford to stay in my home anymore, Madam Speaker? And so it is long overdue. But again, the devil will be in the details. What will that look like? What will the outcome be? Because what we need is a system where people are paying their fair share. And so we need heavy industry to be paying their fair share, and then folks who are just trying to get by in their little home in a rural area to be paying their fair share. And right now, that's not what's happening, Madam Speaker. And so some of the things mentioned here don't go far enough. So yes, basic income, and what does that look like? It says explore a plan for basic income for people with disabilities. So that's not very concrete. I want to know what that means and how quickly that's going to happen, and will there be increases in the extended benefit in the meantime to support people with disabilities, and social assistant increases, yes, and how much and when. Paid sick days and extended leave. There are New Brunswickers who have to choose between going to work sick and getting a paycheck or staying home, and that is wrong. Madam Speaker, people should be guaranteed paid sick days. Ça ne fait pas de bon sens en tant que droit pour les travailleurs et les travailleuses, mais aussi en tant que politique pour la santé publique. Il faut protéger nos communautés et laisser les gens malades rester à la maison. Alors, il faut avoir des congés de maladie payés, et aussi, we need extended leave, job-protected leave. So there's only 5 days of job-protected leave right now. But if someone has a cancer diagnosis and is going to require weeks and weeks of treatment, months and months, that doesn't work, Madam Speaker. So the federal government changed their EI benefits for this to 26 weeks. The province needs to follow their lead and do the same, so that 26 weeks is what's protected. And the Canadian Cancer Society is calling for this, this change, and I support their call for this. Je vais parler un peu de l'éducation. Oui, c'est certain, il faut recruter, retenir et investir dans la formation de nos enseignants, enseignantes, et miser sur les éducateurs et éducatrices qui peuvent parler français, parce qu'on n'a pas assez d'enseignants et enseignantes en général, mais en particulier pour l'immersion. C'est vraiment un problème, et ça risque le programme. Il faut encore, oui, je veux voir des ressources pour l'inclusion, et je veux savoir des détails pour ça. Ça fait longtemps que les personnes qui travaillent dans les écoles disent que ça ne fonctionne pas. Alors, il faut écouter ces travailleurs et travailleuses. Il faut écouter les personnes qui travaillent dans ces milieux, dans les hôpitaux, dans les écoles, parce qu'ils sont des experts sur ce qui se passe dans ces espaces-là. Et pour les enseignants et enseignantes, des fois, ils ont la misère de même enseigner. Il faut assurer que tous les enfants ont mangé, qu'ils ont les vêtements appropriés pour le météo, qu'ils gèrent beaucoup de choses et n'ont pas assez de temps pour même enseigner des journées. Et j'ai des enseignants et enseignantes qui m'ont dit ça, et ça brise le cœur, Madame la Présidente, parce que c'est tellement important, le job qu'ils font. Et aussi, les éducateurs de la petite enfance et éducatrices, c'est pas seulement essentiel pour notre économie d'avoir des espaces dans les garderies, mais aussi pour les travailleurs et travailleuses, et souvent c'est les femmes, pour qu'elles puissent retourner à leur emploi. Je connais des personnes, une enseignante par exemple, qui ne pouvait pas enseigner parce qu'elle n'avait pas un espace dans une garderie. C'est vraiment frustrant ça. Il faut aussi assurer qu'on a assez d'espace dans les garderies francophones, parce qu'il y a aussi des personnes qui... Il faut faire le choix. Est-ce que j'envoie mon enfant à une garderie où il parle anglais, ou je reste à la maison, parce qu'ils n'ont pas l'option d'avoir un espace dans leur langue. Et c'est vraiment pas acceptable du tout, Madame la Présidente. Il y avait presque rien sur l'éducation postsecondaire. Alors, oui, et quoi d'autre? Il y avait presque rien. Alors, j'aimerais voir des investissements et des ententes avec les universités pour assurer la stabilité pour les universités et pour les frais de scolarité, parce que c'est vraiment difficile pour pas seulement ces institutions, mais pour les étudiants et étudiantes de savoir combien est-ce qu'ils vont payer pour leurs frais de scolarité. Il faut avoir la stabilité pour eux et les étudiants internationaux aussi. Je vais continuer et parler à propos de l'économie. I'm going to talk about the economy now, and I think I counted the word balanced. It was said like 50 times yesterday, Madam Speaker. Balanced budget is really a huge focus for this government and the official opposition, trying to hold them to that. And it's not that a balanced budget isn't something to aim for, but it's the wrong target to be aiming for when we have all of these crises, Madam Speaker. And so if a balanced budget can be pulled off, great, but the well-being of New Brunswickers, making sure that, that we don't have so many children living in poverty, making sure that we are retaining our workers, making sure that people with disabilities and people who are on social assistance can afford to eat, making sure that we're actually taking care of the people in our communities needs to be the priority. There needs to be well-being of people woven through all of the policy decisions. And so I'm curious to see what will happen in terms of GBA+, so gender-based analysis plus, for the laws that are being written, for policies, and for the budget that this government will bring, because that needs to be a part of every discussion. There needs to be certain lenses that we're using for everything. One of them should be around GBA+, and so that would be, you know, looking at how people of different genders and how racialized people would be impacted, looking broadly at how different people are impacted. I also strongly believe we need a climate lens on everything that we do, Madam Speaker. And so something we've been pushing for is pay equity, and so that's great. I'm glad to see it in here. I'm curious to see what exactly that's going to look like. It's definitely needed in the care sector. It's needed everywhere, Madam Speaker. Without it, there are people in certain professions being underpaid, predominantly professions traditionally done by women. They've often done it unpaid throughout history, and so it's been valued less because it's been done by women. And so women have been subsidizing the economy by not being paid as much, and so this needs to end. Curious to see how the high-speed internet and cell coverage, which we've been calling for, and I'm glad that the whole government's on board, I'm curious to see how it will be done. And I want to point out the opportunity for there to be public options for some of these as we develop them. I know we've talked about insurance before, like car insurance, but we don't have to have companies come in and do everything. Government can do some things and have lower cost options, and I think that's an important point to make when looking at that. And then it's pretty unclear what's happening with agriculture and food security, hunger, energy. There weren't a lot of details there, so I'm curious to know what this government's going to do when it comes to small modular nuclear reactors. I already see that going off the rails already, and I have major concerns about what that is going to look like, how costly it already has been for New Brunswickers, and we've been subsidizing I think it was ARC, with so many NB Power employees that were working there. I'm curious to know if we're going to be able to recoup that cost, or working for them, sorry, to help them. And I would have liked to see more on infrastructure and roads. This is something that impacts the daily lives of the people in my riding. So there's the Chignecto Isthmus, which is one of the biggest projects that we're facing, and I'm hoping that the minister will be open to hearing some of the key things that need to be considered and listening to some of the experts that have ideas around the best path forward. And then there's things like the Wheaton-covered bridge, which is not only important for our history and our heritage, but right now it's really harming the farmers in my community because they're having to take major detours, and there are fields that didn't even get harvested because it just wasn't worth the extra costs, Madam Speaker. And that is really a terrible outcome. This needs to be fixed. But then there's the roads, and that's really where it touches people's lives every day. Driving on Route 955, and that is a key one that really needs to be rebuilt. Murray Corner Provincial Park, Murray Beach, sorry, Provincial Park is right there in Murray Corner, and Route 955 is an embarrassment, and it's dangerous. I'm terrified that someone's going to lose their life there trying to walk or cycle, or just trying to avoid potholes and ending up across the yellow line. It's a dangerous, dangerous place. And so we need an injection of funds to bring a lot of these assets up to a safe level, because the asset management program right now, it doesn't work if the worst roads are being left to go into disrepair, and that's currently what is happening. And I must mention the need for public transit, the need for someone to be responsible for public transportation in New Brunswick. Maybe it should be the Minister of Transportation, because transportation is already in the name, but someone needs to be in charge of this, because we need a system with buses and trains that function and go on time and more often and more places. Not only do we need things within the cities and in smaller areas, but we need to be able to connect throughout the province. And really, the ball has been dropped on that for too long, and we can do better. And this really connects to a lot of different things. If we talk about public transportation, this can help people to save money. It can help them to get to healthcare appointments, for example, and it's better for the environment. And the environment I would have liked to see more there as well. I know that the government's talking about the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act, but I don't think that's going to go far enough because people need a right to a healthy environment. And I know people across the province are extremely concerned about pesticides and herbicides and don't want more studying and looking at it, but want it banned from our crown forests, and want to increase biodiversity, want to protect our province, and there's going to be so much that needs to be done. I want to see what the climate risk assessment report looks like and how this government's going to address coastal erosion and the pollution that faces so many people in this province. We are really at a tipping point, Madam Speaker, where we're surpassing the global warming, the climate change that was predicted. We're going a lot faster towards these targets we were supposed to avoid. You know, people were saying 1.5 to stay alive, and we're going to hit that and go right past it. And at this point, we're on track to warm potentially 3.1 degrees Celsius by 2100. That's within my children's lifetime, Madam Speaker. And it's terrifying because what this means is not only can you not build a rink in your backyard, which is already becoming something that we can't really do, but there are more ticks in your backyard, and Lyme disease is becoming more and more of a concern. There are heat waves more often, lasting longer, and this is especially bad for the most vulnerable among us. It's bad for the roads, I can tell you that much, especially they're not freezing as many days in the winter. It means more floods, which we've seen in New Brunswick. It means drought, which we've seen in New Brunswick. It means less stability, Madam Speaker. And again, if we don't have a lens of climate on everything we do, if we don't bring all hands on deck to move towards renewable energy, energy efficiency, and becoming more resilient in our communities, then we're in trouble. And there are already lives being lost because of the changes to our climate, and I'm terrified about how many more will be lost, Madam Speaker. And when I talk about global temperatures, it can feel far away, but these impacts that I just listed, they're already happening here, Madam Speaker. I'm not going to be the first MLA to say that, my gosh, 40 minutes goes fast, mais je veux aussi toucher sur la réforme électorale. Madame la Présidente, je sais que la Première ministre a dit qu'elle est vraiment intéressée dans ça. Et je pense que c'est vraiment important de mener quelque chose. Je sais qu'elle proposait une assemblée des citoyens et je pense qu'il faut vraiment faire quelque chose pour améliorer notre démocratie. We need to have proportional representation, which the Premier has talked about being in support of, and we need to strengthen our lobbyist registry, increase transparency, and make the beneficial ownership registry public and free. So these are some of the key things that need to happen that can also help to address inequality and transparency and trust in our institutions. And so, Madame la Présidente, ce que je veux dire, c'est que oui, il y a beaucoup de choses dont j'appuie dans le discours du trône et j'aimerais voir davantage sur plusieurs de ces choses. Yes, there are some good things in this throne speech, and I'd like to see some of them go further in order to really, really serve the people of New Brunswick, because currently our systems are not really working for most people. Basic human needs and basic human rights are not being respected, and what we do here, what laws and policies are implemented, they reflect our values as a society. And so we need to make sure that we are taking care of everyone. And j'apprécie la chance de parler à Madame la Présidente. Alors, merci. Walalin, Waliwan, thank you.
I recognize the Minister of Justice, Attorney General, and Minister responsible for